Part 4. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 31. Sect Master Mingjian, the disciples and others neglected their duties. Sometimes fellow disciples come to collect talismans, and the disciples and others don't know how many more talismans they received. This problem has always existed, and Yu Yulin also complained to Zhu Yun. The craze for elementary talismans that started because of him made this problem even bigger. But the elementary talisman is not worth much. If there are few talismans, everyone in the talisman hall will use their own share to put them in. It is not a big deal to make an empty account. But at this time, the sect leader discovered him on the spot and had no other choice but to admit his mistake. Snort. Lin Zhenyang snorted coldly, and had a plan in mind. He sent Sun Suanhua back to the valley first, and then said in a deep voice, "This matter will not be made public for the time being. You must make up for it. If there is a suspect entering or leaving the talisman hall, please notify the sect leader immediately." After saying that, he threw out a green jade block. "Notify this jade block, and my sect leader will come immediately. Remember, it is better to kill the wrong one than to let it go. Thank you, sect master, for your great kindness." Everyone in the Fu hall quickly knelt down to thank him. Lin Zhenyang raised his head and said, "If it weren't for the lack of intermediate talismans such as the Firebird talisman, this sect leader would definitely take your heads to settle the score today. Remember, if anyone else knows about this, they will also end up like this." After saying that, Lin Zhenyang stepped on the long sword and flew away in the air. The surroundings calmed down, and a minor cultivator asked in a low voice, "Senior brother Yu, what should we do? Although the intermediate talismans match the inventory number, the primary talismans are really missing a lot. What can I do?" "I don't know. Do as the sect leader says, otherwise, our path to immortality will come to an end." Yu Yulin scolded everyone in the Lingjian sect who he knew personally and who had received the talisman. Their family is very clean. Wherever there is anyone, it is these people who took too many talismans and did not take the initiative to return them. While cursing, he suddenly thought of Zhu Yun. If everyone were like Zhu Yun, how could my life be so miserable? He stood up and glared at everyone, and said, "Watch carefully. No matter who comes to receive the talisman in the future, give one of each kind. This way, you won't give the wrong one." All the subordinates said yes one after another, and another young cultivator said, "Senior brother Yu, but this fireball talisman is gone too. No need to inform elder son. What a ghost. You guys are here every day and you don't know what you are doing." Yu Yulin could only vent his anger on these people, but thought in his heart that these elementary talismans were being tricked by others. They were so inhuman. Lin Zhenyang was extremely fast and returned to the sword dance venue in a matter of seconds. "Sect master, have you found anything? Do you need me to arrest the person and deal with him according to the sect's rules?" Elder Jin looked up to the sky and asked. Lin Zhenyang shook his head and winked, and Elder Jin nodded in understanding. This was to let him pretend that nothing happened to avoid leaking the news. So he withdrew his eyes and said to Zhu Yun, "Little boy, you win this battle." Zhu Yun felt relieved. Fortunately, he was doing things secretly and would not be caught. "I just don't know if the business of using the Firebird talisman to earn spiritual stones can still be done." "Thank you, Elder Jin. This is my good luck." Zhu Yun said quickly without thinking too much. "No need to thank me, luck is also a part of strength. In the path to immortality, luck is equally important." Elder Jin took out Zhu Yun's identity plate from his storage bag, scratched it with his hand, and handed it back. 100 sects have contributed to this. In addition, the winner of this competition can challenge any 8 senior brothers over there. If he wins, you can participate. I will allow you to think about it overnight, and you can come at noon tomorrow find me. Zuyun knew that those 8 senior brothers should all be in the upper half of the area after 3 years of entry. His eyes moved slightly. If he could win, he would have 1,000 contribution points. But what else can I do? It's so difficult. Thank you, Elder Jin. Disciple, go back and think about it all night. Zuyun cupped his hands and thanked him. Just as he was about to leave, Elder Jin smiled and said, "Why, you still have rewards that you don't want." As he spoke, Elder Jin saw something else in his hand. A small light cyan sword. This is a low-grade mid-level magical sword. We, the Spirit Sword sect, focus on practicing swords, so naturally we use the sword as a reward. But you, a freak, have never used a sword at all. Elder Jin said and threw the sword over. It was the first time that Zuyun heard that low-grade magical swords were divided into different grades. He couldn't help but curiously asked, "Elder Jin, there is an additional middle grade. The magical weapons are divided into 3 levels, lower, middle, and upper, corresponding to the chi refining stage, the foundation building stage and the elixir forming stage. Naturally, they are also subdivided according to quality. You new minor cultivators can only be assigned to low-grade and low-level magic swords. It's usually called inferior." I see. Zuyun's eyes suddenly lit up. No wonder this competition encountered many different swords. For example, Chen Hua, who just won, has a black snake sword. Like the one issued by the sect, it doesn't even have a name. In addition, there is also the sword given by Elder Wan, which seems to be extraordinary. Zuyun put away his sword, thanked him again, and then returned to the valley. What a good boy, I've only been here for a month and my wings are pretty strong. As soon as he passed through the fog formation, Zuyun heard Sun Suanhua's cold voice. Zuyun secretly thought something was wrong, and quickly said respectfully, "I have met Master." "Hey, good boy, do you still remember that I am the Master? I am very powerful. The talisman I draw is even better than me. Are you trying to beat the waves ahead and beat me to death on the beach?" Zuyun couldn't help but be shocked by the continuous sarcasm. Could it be that the matter of today's fireball talisman was pinned on Sun Suanhua's head? Then Sun Suanhua saved himself again? "Master, I don't know what you are talking about. I just learned the Earth Shield Talisman. I'm afraid that the Earth Shield Talisman can also use the power of the Earth Armor Talisman," Sun Suanhua said with a sneer. Zuyun bit the bullet and said, "Master, I don't know what you are talking about." "Don't know? Just pretend, Zuyun. If you don't explain the matter clearly today, I will expel you from the sect and let Wang Jianchen take you away." Sun Suanhua was furious and couldn't help but blurt out, "What? Wang Jianchen takes me away?" Zuyun didn't understand. This is considered a threat? "Master, isn't Wang Jianchen a beacon for the disciples of Lingjian sect to practice? They all aim to enter Wang Jianchen and are proud to enter Wang Jianchen. Moreover, Wang Jianchen also has..." "You know shit." Hearing Zuyun speak well of Wang Jianchen like this, Sun Suanhua blushed and cursed. But after the curse, he remained silent. Zuyun suddenly felt something was wrong and said, "Master, I really don't know what's going on. If you really let Wang Jianshan take me away, I can't do anything." He was not a fool. In the past month, from not allowing me to practice at the beginning to neither supporting nor opposing at the end, Zuyun knew that Sun Suanhua should care about him. The strange thing was Wang Jianshan. Recalling that after I used the gold spiritual power to release the sword energy, he stopped letting me practice sword, obviously afraid of being taken away by Wang Jianshan. "Little kid, tell me, what's the matter with the fireball talisman?" Sun Suanhua asked as if he had held back a sentence. "What fireball talisman? I really don't know. This is not only Zuyun's trump card, but also because the sect master has personally investigated it. If he said it, it might endanger his life. He would not tell anyone. Really don't know. Sun Suanhua frowned. He was very upset that he almost took the blame today, and the first person he suspected was Zuyun. On the sword cliff that day, there was the residual breath of his sword moves and the strange breath of the fireball talisman. He had to suspect Zuyun. But he also saw Zuyun use his spiritual power to charge the fireball talisman and almost fainted. So he ruled out Zuyun again. But today, he could feel that something big had happened with Lin Zhenyang. Little kid, I will trust you once. But keep a low profile recently, don't go out if you don't have anything to do, and learn my skills well. Sun Suanhua knew that even if it was Zuyun who did it, he would never admit it and there was nothing he could do. Zuyun was his only hope to escape from here. As long as Zuyun could buy him 3 days. That would be enough. Master, no. I still have to participate in the competition. Hearing that Sun Suanhua was a little bit imprisoned, Zuyun was anxious. He not only had to fight for more resources, but also had to take care of Ergu. What? Still fighting? Sun Suanhua's eyes widened, and he said, you won again today. Zuyun nodded. Master, today I used a fireball talisman I got from the talisman hall, and it suddenly exploded with the same power as the firebird talisman. Damn it, it turned out that you almost made me get beaten by Lin Zhenyang. Sun Suanhua suddenly became angry and took out a firebird talisman from his arms. Master, don't. This is worth a spirit stone. Zuyun screamed, not because he was afraid that the firebird talisman would hit him, but because he wanted to resist, he had to use the earth shield talisman. Isn't this really exposed? Little kid, come with me. It seemed that a spirit stone stimulated Sun Suanhua. He snorted and took back the firebird talisman. After saying something, he left with his hands behind his back. Zuyun didn't understand why, but he knew that Sun Suanhua would not take it out on him again, so he followed closely behind him. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 32. Zuyun followed Sun Suanhua to the room on the side of the library. Master, why did you take me to the alchemy room? Zuyun knew that this was the alchemy room, the only place that he didn't need to take care of. It was also his first time here. After all, when he saw a furnace made of fine copper and as tall as others, he felt a little hot in his heart. At this time, there was still a fire burning under the bronze cauldron, which Zuyun found very strange. You haven't forgotten the 7 skills of a teacher, have you? Sun Suanhua answered the question incorrectly. Remember, alchemy, weapon refining, elixir cultivation, brewing, talismans, formations and movement techniques. Zuyun will not forget. Sun Suanhua nodded and said, how about if you get a first glimpse of all 7 skills of my master, and my master will tell you the secret of Wanjian Mountain. Hearing this, Zuyun frowned slightly. Big Dog is different from Argo. Big Dog has no brothers and sisters. There is only one father in the family who beats him up when he is drunk. He doesn't love his family, he just wants to succeed in cultivating immortality. He will definitely regard Wanjianshan as his way out. Master, is this Wanjian Mountain, good or bad? Zuyun asked quickly. Sun Suanhua sneered and asked, do you think Lingjian sect is good or bad? Zuyun thought, if I knew good and bad, why would I ask you? He shook his head, not knowing how to express his doubts, and Sun Suanhua spoke again. How can there be good or bad in the world of immortality? After that, he shook his head and said to Zuyun, elixirs are not the foundation of a monk, but a monk's path to immortality is indispensable without elixirs. My master's alchemy skills are nothing in the Yao realm, but they are also extraordinary in Yunzhou. The alchemist is comparable. Yejing. Zuyun was stunned, hearing this place name for the first time. Sun Suanhua glanced at him and explained, Wanjian Mountain is in the center of Yao realm. Yunzhou is just a remote area of Yao realm. Zuyun suddenly remembered that he had read the Yunzhou Chronicles and said, Master, Yunzhou was really the place where the good and the evil factions fought in the past. The book said that they fought for hundreds of years, so Yunzhou became a barren place for cultivating immortals. Land. Have you even read that book? Sun Suanhua was a little surprised, then sighed and said, back to the original question, what do you think is decent and what is evil? Zuyun said thoughtfully, Master, I have only heard of two sects so far, one is Lingjian sect and the other is Wanjian Mountain. Sun Suanhua smiled and said, Little kid, these are not some secrets. When you have free time, you should look through my master's library more often. Today, my master, I just want to show you my master's style. After that, he talked about some things about elixirs, and then took Zuyun to the brewery and the refining room. Zuyun had already learned some talismans, but Sun Suanhua didn't bring them. The medicine garden is also visible every day, and Zuyun occasionally needs to fetch water for irrigation. Finally, their footsteps stopped in front of the library. Actually, what I'm best at as a teacher is setting up formations. Suddenly, Sun Suanhua said this. Master, is the formation, a formation like the mist formation? The fog formation is also called a formation. Sun Suanhua looked disdainful, as if he wanted to say something, but he immediately swallowed it back. Anyway, you learn to set up the formation last. Learn the three things of alchemy, weapon refining and talismans first, remember. Disciple remembers it. Zuyun kept an eye on it. These three things seem to be what Sun Suanhua does the most. For example, the elixirs, magic swords, and talismans needed by the sect. He vaguely felt something was wrong, but he didn't dare to ask. From this point of view, Sun Suanhua wants to give everything to him. Zuyun also kept this idea in his heart. In short, the skills are not overwhelming. After remembering everything Sun Suanhua said, it was still early in the day, so Zuyun went to Magian Cliff. After drawing some talismans in the Dao glass mirror, he found Ergu. Little wish. Zuyun was very happy to see his two dogs and looked much better. I took a Heki pill and I feel almost recovered. That puts me at ease. Zuyun took out 5 talismans from his arms. 3 fireball talisman and 2 earth shield talisman. Ergu was not polite and put them all away. Seeing that it was getting dark, Ergu urged, Xiaozu, go back quickly. It would be bad if someone discovers it. I know. Seeing that Ergu was in good spirits, Zuyun nodded and left. Ergu looked at Zuyun's leaving figure and murmured to himself, Xiaozu, remember what you promised me, if I can't hold it anymore, I must go back and see my little sister. As he spoke, his throat surged, and a trace of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Ergu wiped it casually, picked up the last Iki pill and swallowed it. You bitch, if you dare to come here again at night, I will risk my life to keep one. When Zuyun returned to the valley, there was a tinkling sound in Sun Suanhua's weapon refining room. He didn't go over and went straight back to his house. After thinking about it, he decided to read Yunzhou Chronicles. For some reason, he was very interested in the word Yajing. A place as big as Yunzhou is actually just a corner of Yao realm. What about above the Yao realm? Reading this book again, Zuyun was not as restless as the first time. After the first rough introduction, he quickly became addicted to it. This book tells the history of Yunzhou, large and small. Before the war between good and evil, the east coast of Yunzhou was considered a fertile land. Compared with Yaezhou in the center of Yajing, it is not inferior at all. It can be said that there is a foundation building stage every 3 steps and a dan formation stage every 5 steps. This means that there are countless foundation building and dan formation stages. Seeing this, Zuyun couldn't help but be fascinated. At that time, Yunzhou was full of sacred mountains and treasures, and there were many sects, which could be said to be 100 flowers blooming. All major sects had Yuanying ancestors sitting in the formation, and it was said that there were realms after Yuanying. Until later, some monks who practiced evil techniques suddenly appeared and wreaked havoc on Yunzhou. They formed their own forces, wandering around the borders under the jurisdiction of major sects, killing people and seizing treasures, and even refining corpses into puppets, extracting souls to refine ghost flags. The major sects could not reach an agreement, and no one was willing to take the lead, which made the power of the demons grow more and more. Until some relatively weak sects were attacked and wiped out, this caused an uproar. All the sects in Yunzhou were in danger, and they had no choice but to gather together and fight a decisive battle with the demonic path. In the end, the demonic path perished, but Yunzhou was no longer the same as before. Countless Yuanying stage cultivators died, and cultivators of higher levels also fled far away, unwilling to stay here and sacrifice their immortal path that they had finally embarked on. At the same time, the rupture of the earth veins led to the exhaustion of spiritual power, and therefore some things that were born and raised by nature were difficult to grow. In this way, Yunzhou became a barren land for cultivators. Everyone who had a little ability wanted to leave here and seek a better place for development. The forces of the major sects collapsed, leaving only some cultivators who were unwilling to leave, lingering on, or becoming free and easy cultivators, or establishing sects, huddling together for warmth, relying on finding some cultivation geniuses to train, and giving them to other sects in exchange for their own cultivation resources. Seeing this, Zuyun had already guessed something. Lingjian sect was the place to cultivate seedlings for Wanjian Mountain. No wonder, Lingjian sect does not shy away from the issue of its disciples leaving the sect. They even support it. It's just because Lingjian sect makes a living from it. Zuyun flipped through the whole book. He didn't see anything about Yejing. Master should know, right? Zuyun closed the Yunzhou Chronicle and decided to ask again when he had a chance. He knew the way of survival of Lingjian section. If he wanted to go further, he had to leave here. But Wanjian Mountain was obviously not a good place. So, what about Daegu? Zuyun knew nothing about the outside of Yunzhou. The more he thought about it, the more irritated he became. He simply took out the 5 Elements Chaos Sutra and started to read it. This sutra seemed to have magic power. Zuyun quickly calmed down and began to practice. After not looking inward carefully for a few days, Zuyun was surprised to find that his danshan seemed to slowly turn into a 5-color turntable. Before the qi refining stage, his qi C was just like a 5-color turntable. At this time, the whole danshan had a tendency to turn into a 5-color turntable. The 5 Elements Chaos Sutra did not explain this, and he did not know much about cultivation. He could only judge that there was no abnormality in his body, so there should be no problem. Forget it, let's think about how to deal with the duel tomorrow. Those are all above the 6th level of qi refining. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 33. Zuyun put the 5 Elements of Chaos Sutra back into his storage bag. Looking at the bed that I hadn't slept on for a long time, there seemed to be a gray cloth bag exposed under the quilt. Hey, is this a storage bag? He was stunned for a moment, then suddenly thought about it. Isn't this what Zhang Tianyuan asked Qin Liken to bring to him? At that time, he was scolded by Sun Suanhua, and then he tried his sword again. After returning to the house, he put the storage bag on the bed. In the next few days, I was preparing for the competition again, so I completely forgot about it. He said he would go out to hunt for treasure. The treasure must be in the storage bag. Zuyun just had no clue, so he immediately dripped blood onto the storage bag. As soon as he formed a mental connection, his chest suddenly shook. Hey, what's going on? What's wrong with the Daewoo glazed mirror? That's where the Daewoo glass mirror is. Since Zuyun entered and exited several times, the Daewoo glazed mirror has been embedded on his left chest. You can't take it off no matter what. Could it be that there are fragments of the Daewoo glazed mirror in this bag? Zuyun remembered that the green jade slip said that as long as there are fragments within a certain distance, there will be mutual reactions. Is this what Zhang Tianyuan found? Instantly, he felt his breathing become heavier. Carefully patting the storage bag, a piece of silver light suddenly flashed out from the space and went straight towards Zuyun's chest. Zuyun was shocked. The glazed mirror on his chest was owned by him with blood, but Zhang Tianyuan's piece was considered an ownerless thing. He still remembers the sharpness of the glass mirror. As he thought, Zuyun quickly jumped towards the back. After days of fighting, coupled with his hard training, Zuyun has made great progress in the secret of immortality. But there is no way to escape the pursuit of this fragment. No matter how Zuyun dodges, the silver light follows behind him like an erosion of bones. By the way, the two fragments must merge. But now, I can only enter the mirror space. However, Zuyun found that at this time, he could not enter it at all. Just like that, the silver light crashed into Zuyun's chest and made a crisp sound. And Zuyun just passed out? In the distance, Sun Suanhua swung his hammer and struck a piece of fine iron in his hand over and over again, the sound covering everything else. Unconsciously, there was a lot of movement in Zuyun's house. After an unknown amount of time, Zuyun woke up. His first reaction when he opened his eyes was whether he was dead or not. He clearly remembered that the two fragments collided together, and the sound they made was not loud, but it was like sharp nails scratching his soul. Even now, his head was still spinning. He managed to hold his eyelids open and found that he was in a cave in the mirror space, but the cave seemed to be much brighter. And he was lying on the ground. It's strange. I can't come in when I want to. I'm unconscious but come in instead. Zuyun tried his best to recall, but couldn't remember how he got in. He still had some strength left in him, so he stood up and subconsciously looked towards the light source. Suddenly, his mouth opened wide. The cave that was originally closed with no way out now actually has an additional entrance. What's going on? Are the two fragments fused together? He was so surprised that he cautiously reached out of the cave, ignoring his drowsiness. The light was a bit dazzling, and he didn't dare to open his eyes too wide. But after a few steps, the rich spiritual power and the fragrance of the elixir came from everywhere, making him immediately excited. I saw a medicinal garden outside the cave. The medicine garden is not big, but there are many kinds. Some of the elixirs even seem to have spirituality. After seeing Zuyun, they shrank back into the earth. I have never seen these elixirs before. But their spiritual power is so powerful. Zuyun felt that if this elixir could transform, he might be beaten. It's incredible. He stood and looked at it for a while, and found that there was something very different about the soil where the elixir was grown. And the spiritual power in the air seems to come out of the ground. Spiritual pulse. Spiritual veins refer to spiritual stone veins, which are naturally nourished by the earth and possess immense spiritual energy. Apart from this, Zuyun could not find any other explanation for his shallow knowledge. It's so amazing. You can use spiritual veins to grow elixirs. No wonder these elixirs are so spiritual. Zuyun had not yet learned the art of planting medicine and knew nothing about these elixirs. He reluctantly looked away and looked around, but everything was foggy. It was originally just a sealed cave. After the fusion, will it become so big? Zuyun often walked back and forth in the fog formation, so he felt that there was nothing strange about the fog, so he walked over. Just one step away from the mist, the danshan in the body suddenly rotated rapidly, and spiritual power rushed into the limbs and bones uncontrollably. Zuyun was shocked. He had never encountered such a situation since he had spiritual power in his body. But he also knew that this must be an early warning from his body, so he quickly took a few steps back. After a moment, Danshan returned to normal speed. There is a ghost in the fog. Is there anything else outside the fog? Zuyun thought with lingering fear and decided to leave first. A thought came to my mind. He had already returned to the room. The surroundings were as quiet as before, and the room was not damaged in any way, which made Zuyun feel relieved. The Dao glass mirror was his last secret. He didn't want anyone to find out. He reached out to touch his chest, and sure enough, the two fragments merged into one, all embedded in Zuyun's chest. However, it was only a little bigger than before. Maybe that's why I'm fine? This fragment is ownerless, and I refined it. If I encounter a fragment of the glass mirror with an owner in the future, I don't know what will happen to me. It seems that after finishing my business in the Lingjian sect, I must find a place to practice to a certain level before I can go out to practice. Thinking of this, Zuyun became more determined to become stronger. Lingjian sect must leave as soon as possible. Otherwise he is a frog in the well. But he has to learn Sun Suanhua's skills. Otherwise, it would be a pity to leave so many spiritual medicines. Of course, there is also Ergu's matter. I must help him get it done. And now, it is tomorrow's duel, and I don't have any extra means now, so why not give up? Once this thought came up, Zuyun began to weigh the pros and cons. Indeed, the rewards for the duel are very rich. But I suddenly have an extra medicine in the spiritual field. Is it still necessary? After thinking about it, Zuyun decided to give up. If I get hurt, it will be more trouble than gain. With one thought, Zuyun felt relaxed all over. With another piece of glass mirror fragment, he lay down in the bed and decided to have a good sleep. At this time, the way down the mountain of Magian Cliff. Countless black shadows slowly moved along the mountain road towards the cave entrance. Here they come again. No matter what I say, I will leave a body for Xiaozu. Ergo showed a ferocious look on his face, holding the fireball talisman in one hand and the earth shield talisman in the other. Blood was already flowing from the corner of his mouth. Because he was already at the end of his strength. In order not to worry Zuyun, he swallowed a chi combining pill and pretended to be full of spiritual power. The first night's battle had almost exhausted him. At the same time, he also knew that these black shadows were formed by some spiritual power attached to dead objects. With his knowledge, he didn't know what this was. He only knew that the spiritual power on it might be absorbed by Zuyun, making him stronger. As for the rest, he didn't think too much. There was no place for him in the Lingjian sect. He knew it when he was driven out of the valley by Sun Suanhua. But he didn't expect to encounter such a ghost thing under the Magian cliff. Outside the cave, the layers of black shadows did not rush directly into the cave, unlike last night. Ergu sneered, "What tricks are you going to do? Look at my fireball talisman." Seeing that there were more and more black shadows, Ergu threw out a fireball talisman. The fireball talisman suddenly turned into a ball of fire, and when it rushed out of the cave, it had become a super large fireball. It was like the sun appearing in the dark night, instantly dispelling the darkness. Before Ergu could see clearly, the fireball had already hit the wall made of these shadows. Boom! The fireball exploded, making a shocking sound that kept echoing in the Magian cliff. Last night, the fireball talisman was in the cave, and the sound was completely absorbed by the stone wall. But at this time, the sound kept spreading out. Almost everyone in the Lingjian sect heard it. It awakened countless cultivators, including masters of the foundation building period such as Lin Zhenyang. "Come on, go to Magian Cliff," Lin Zhenyang shouted in a low voice, and several lights and shadows soared into the sky and flew towards Magian Cliff. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 34. Where to go? In the sky, there were several lights and shadows, all of which were the foundation building cultivators who were ranked at the top of the Lingjian sect. However, another faster sword light blocked their way. Lin Zhenyang was secretly shocked. Elder Wan usually did not show off his abilities, but just based on the speed of flying the sword, his strength was at least 2 small realms higher than his. Elder Wan, there is something unusual happening at the Magian Cliff. Lin Zhenyang said respectfully. You can't go to the Magian Cliff. Elder Wan said in a deep voice. But Lin Zhenyang was unwilling in his heart, but Elder Wan blocked him when he said it. Wan, let's go and take a look. The Magian Cliff was arranged by Wanjian Mountain. Listening to the sound, it seems to come from the bottom of the cliff. You can't go. Elder Wan's unquestionable tone, with a faint pressure, Lin Zhenyang instantly gave in. Then I'll have to trouble Elder Wan. He bowed his head slightly, and then shouted in a low voice, let's go. Behind him, the sword lights followed and finally landed in the Master's Hall. Master, that old Wan is too much. Elder Mu was very upset and said, he is only at the 8th level of foundation building. We can definitely kill him here if we set up a formation. This master knows that he can be killed, but what after killing him? Wanjian Mountain is not a small sect of my Lingjian sect that can match it. Lin Zhenyang sighed. At worst, we will go far away to Yejing and join other sword cultivation sects. If there is really no way out, being a rural cultivator is better than being a coward here. Another elder said. You guys. Lin Zhenyang shook his head and said, what we pursue is the Great Way. What does the Great Way need? It's not to fight for the moment, but to fight for the immortal fate. Who can guarantee that if we go to other places in Yejing, we will live better than now? As soon as this was said, everyone shut up. Because what Lin Zhenyang said was indeed reasonable. At least now, they don't need to worry about cultivation resources. They don't need to do tasks in exchange for sect resources like the disciples. Who can guarantee that if they join other powerful sects, they can practice at any time like now? They all know that the foundation building stage can walk sideways in Yunzhou. If they go to Yejing, they will probably have to live in misery. Be patient for a while, wait until all of us brothers and sisters enter the Jindan stage, and then we can travel together. The world is so big, isn't there a place for us to stay? After Lin Zhenyang finished speaking, he waved his hand and signaled everyone to disperse. At this time, Wan Laojin also had a gloomy face, muttering to himself, the center of the formation is under the Magian Cliff. If people knew that the old demon was imprisoned here, I'm afraid the whole Ya realm would be in chaos. Ordinary people only know that we are collecting seedlings in the Lingjian sect, but they don't know that the biggest purpose is to suppress this person. Don't let anything happen. Following the downhill road, he went down quickly and landed in the cave in an instant. Who? The black shadow did not dissipate. He struck out with a sword, and all the black shadows were instantly dispersed. At the same time, he also felt a faint breath coming from the cave. When his spiritual consciousness swept over, he couldn't help but be stunned. Are you, the disciple of Elder Mu who was expelled from the sect? When he was patrolling the sword dance field to find suitable seedlings, he had seen this scene at that time. But he was too lazy to pay attention. Ergu only has 3 spiritual roots, which is not very useful. But he didn't expect to meet here. Greetings, Elder. Ergu only knew that Wan Laojin was an elder of the Spirit Sword sect, and didn't know his specific identity. He forced himself to support himself and bowed to the ground. Why are you here? Wan Laojin asked calmly, but in fact he had a murderous intention in his heart. The secret of the Magian Cliff must not be known to anyone. Elder, I was expelled from the sect, and I have no place to call home. I, I heard from Elder Mu that it is extremely dangerous under the Magian cliff, so I found this place based on the most dangerous place is the safest. He almost said Zuyun, and quickly changed his words. Fortunately, Wan Laojin didn't care about this, and said in a deep voice, "Did you make the noise just now? With your injured body and disordered spiritual power, how can you launch such a powerful attack?" "I used the talisman." Iargo didn't dare to hide it. There was really no other explanation, so he simply took out the remaining talismans. Looking at the fireball talisman, Wan Laojin immediately remembered the duel in the daytime sword dance field. At that time, Lin Zhenyang was also investigated, but nothing was found, which made him angry for a while. "Did you draw this talisman?" Wan Laojin stretched out his hand and grabbed it, and all the talismans flew into his hands. He looked back and forth, and it was indeed no different from an ordinary fireball talisman. "It was drawn by my disciple." Iargo felt something was wrong, so he simply admitted it. Because Zuyun told him that he must not reveal it. "Very good," Wan Laojin smiled sinisterly, and slapped him casually. "Dare to stay at the sword cliff for the night, die. It just so happens that I have a reason to kill you to silence you." Even if Iargo was not injured, he was not Wan Laojin's enemy. What's more, all the talismans were taken away, and there was no spiritual power on his body. Knowing that he was going to die, Iargo simply closed his eyes and waited for death. Unexpectedly, after waiting for a long time, no attack came, but Wan Laojin's roar came. "Get out of here! You dirty bastards!" He opened his eyes in surprise, and saw that all the shadows were entangled with Wan Laojin. Wan Laojin was immediately in a panic. Although he could defeat many shadows with each strike of his long sword. But in the dark night, these shadows were elusive, and with this protective color, Wan Laojin was overwhelmed. "Anyway, I will die, and I can't die in the hands of you, an old ghost." Urgo's eyes flashed with determination, and he rushed out of the cave with all his strength. His spiritual power was messed up, but his physical fitness was not weak. However, he couldn't hold on for long. He knew that Wan Laojin cared about the bottom of the Magian cliff, and was also afraid of the bottom of the Magian cliff. "Then let me disgust you before I die. If I die, you won't find out that this magical talisman is related to Xiaozu." He rushed out of the cave, rushed across the mountain road, and jumped off the cliff. Damn, he actually jumped off the cliff. Chen Laojin was furious, and his spiritual power suddenly soared. In an instant, the shadows surrounding him were killed. While the shadows didn't catch up, he jumped up and flew away on his sword. In the sect master's hall, Lin Zhenyang hurried out of the hall to greet Wan Laojin, who felt that Wan Laojin had returned. "Elder Wan, what are you doing?" Hearing that his breath was a little chaotic, Lin Zhenyang couldn't help but be surprised. Wan Laojin was in the spirit sword sect, who could hurt him? If I had known earlier, I would have listened to Elder Mu and joined forces to kill him, and then took his treasure and fled. "Humph, Lin Zhenyang, I didn't expect that I would do a good thing for you." Wan Laojin threw out all the talismans. "This is..." When Lin Zhenyang saw the fireball talisman, he also remembered what happened during the day. "That's right, I tracked down Magian Cliff and found that Elder Mu's disciple was hiding in a cave on the way down the mountain." "Humph, it was the talisman drawn by that kid, probably a spy sent from somewhere." Wan Laojin was just looking for a reason to kill people, so as to cover up the real purpose of Magian Cliff. Otherwise, he was a foundation building period, and he was from Wanjian Mountain. If he killed a disciple of Lingjian sect, I'm afraid someone would think it was inappropriate. It's not that he was afraid of revenge. But he was afraid that the word of mouth would spread to the outside world and attract the attention of interested people. Besides, what is the most feared thing about spreading the word? Three people make a tiger. After Wan Laojin finished speaking, he went straight back to his residence, took out a pill and swallowed it, and then sat down to practice. Lin Zhenyang flipped the fireball talisman in his hand and saw a few earth shield talismans. Wan Laojin, this old ghost, seems to be lying. Elder Mu's disciples can draw talismans. Ha, who would believe it? However, that kid must be inseparable from this matter. I will ask you Yulin tomorrow. It seems that there are not many people who have grudges against my Lingjian sect. It should be some independent cultivator who found Zhou Huanghua. Lin Zhenyang collected these talismans and planned to keep them for his own use. Not to mention, it is comparable to a foundation establishment stage attack, which is really unexpected. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 35. The next day. I wish Yun to wake up refreshed. Although after entering the qi refining period, there is no need to sleep much. But this time, Zhu Yun slept very comfortably, all thanks to his clear mind and no distracting thoughts. After washing up, he found Sun Suanhua. I have met the master. Disciples say hello to the master. Zhu Yun said respectfully. That's weird. Sun Suanhua looked Zhu Yun up and down. Did your kid secretly eat the elixir in the alchemy room and lose his mind? Zhu Yun didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and said, Master, this disciple thought about it all night and decided not to participate in the next competition, and to learn his skills from the master. Oh, Sun Suanhua raised his eyebrows and said, don't you have a bad temper? Why do you suddenly no longer want to practice? Master, it's not that you don't practice, but that you should learn master's skills well. Disciples still have to practice. Zhu Yun corrected the mistakes in the other party's words. The 7 skills of being a teacher are enough for you to learn. Why do you insist on practicing? Sun Suanhua was dissatisfied. Master, this disciple will definitely not fall behind in his studies. He will definitely put study first and cultivation as a supplement. Zhu Yun knew that he had to coax Sun Suanhua. Okay, now that you have figured it out, it's easy to handle. In the morning, if you have nothing to do as a teacher, you can go to Magian Cliff to practice body skills. In the afternoon, you will either make alchemy or weapon refining. At night, you will learn talismans. That's it? Originally, Sun Suanhua didn't want to teach body movements. But at that time, in order to let Zhu Yun vent his anger and participate in the competition, he was asked to learn Zhenfa. Now that he has been fooled into learning his own skills, his body skills must not fall behind. Otherwise, you can't live up to your words. As for brewing wine, setting up formations and planting medicine, there is no rush. Zhu Yun felt excited when he heard that Sun Suanhua personally told him to go to Magian Cliff. Yes, Master, I would like to listen to Master's teachings. Sun Suanhua waved his hand and said with a look of disgust on his face, how can you still practice if you just listen to my teachings? Get out of here and remember to come back at noon. Yes, Master. Zhu Yun also wanted to see Ergu to see how he was recovering. With Sun Suanhua's approval, he turned around and dived out of the mist formation. Sun Suanhua shook his head and said with a smile, this man, like a donkey, I finally understand the principle of carrot and stick. The little kid just wants to practice, as long as I give him some sweetness, he is quite obedient. Of stretching, he murmured to himself as he went back to the house, I hit 10,000 hammers last night, my hands are sore, if I didn't have something to defend myself on the way home, what the hell would I have created, device. As soon as Zhu Yong left the valley, he met an acquaintance. Yu Yulin from Futang was seen approaching in a hurry, and he quickly said hello. Senior brother Yu, are you looking for my master so early? Good morning, junior brother. Seeing that Zhu was going, Yu Yulin stopped and said, yes, yesterday the fireball talisman was used by the sect master, and the inventory is insufficient. I can only ask Elder Sun to replenish some. Master, take the fireball talisman. Zhu Yun's heart tightened. Yesterday, he knew that Lin Zhenyang went to Futang to investigate, but he didn't know that he had taken away the fireball talisman. He rolled his eyes and asked, "What do you want those fireball talismans for during the foundation building period?" "Junior brother Zhu, you don't know something." "I don't know what happened. One of those fireball talismans actually changed. It was obviously a fireball talisman, but when it was cast, it had the power of the firebird talisman. At that time, senior brother, I terrified." Yu Yulin couldn't help but wipe his sweat when he thought of what happened yesterday. Zhu Yun looked calm and took one, which meant that two more were taken away by other fellow students. However, now that there is no fireball talisman in the Futang, it is impossible for him to fish in troubled waters. "Then senior brother Yu, did the sect leader take the fireball talisman?" Zhu Yun asked. "Yeah, I don't know why, but he just took the fireball talisman, but he didn't touch the other talismans. Senior brother, next time someone comes to collect the talisman, please don't make a mistake again. The sect is in charge of the talisman hall, so you have to be careful. Thank you for your concern, junior brother. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave for now." Although Yu Yulin thought Zhu Yun was quite good, he had important matters at hand at the moment, so he didn't stop there. After saying a few words, he hurriedly walked along the mountain road towards the valley. Zhu Yun thought to himself, it seems that he still has to hurry up and get the other series of talismans and put them on his body in case of emergency. After writing this down, Zhu Yun rushed to Mijian Cliff. On the way down the mountain, the smell of blood was much lighter than yesterday, and Zhu Yun couldn't help but relax a lot. But when he reached the cave, he found that there was no one there. "Two dogs. Two dogs." Zhu Yun was shocked. There was no response at all in the cave, and his shouts continued to echo in the mountain. "Two dogs, two dogs." Zhu Yun shouted several times in all directions. Except for a few birds chirping from the mountains, there was no other sound. "Iargo is gone." Zhu Yun's eyes suddenly went blank and he stared blankly at the ground, only to notice a few sword marks. "Ever had a fight?" He was startled and stood up. These sword marks were so deep that no two dogs could produce them. Moreover, around the sword mark, there are traces of the explosion of the fireball talisman. Ergu had a fight with someone? Zhu Yun had this idea in his mind, but if that was the case, then who would fight with Ergu? The first thing he thought of was Elder Mu. But Elder Mu had already promised Elder Jin that he would give Elder Mu a 3-year deadline. Given Elder Jin's character, he would never give up if Elder Mu broke his promise. Moreover, Elder Mu didn't need to kill Iargo again, otherwise it would damage his reputation. Who could it be? Zhu Yun looked carefully, but at his current level, he found nothing except the traces left by the sword and the fireball talisman. Could it be that Iargo escaped? He couldn't help but think so, because there was not even a trace of blood on the ground. Zhu Yun walked to the side of the mountain road, and there was a cliff below. The cliff was surrounded by clouds and mist, and it was bottomless. After thinking about it, he only thought that Iargo didn't want to drag him down, and might have hidden somewhere else to practice. He only remembered that yesterday, Iargo seemed to have recovered from all his injuries, and there were several talismans left on his body. As long as he didn't encounter the foundation building period, he should have no problem protecting himself. Zhu Yun was relieved and decided to use the cave as his own practice place. With a thought, he entered the Dea glass mirror and began to draw talismans. He was already very proficient in the fireball talisman and the earth shield talisman, but he still had to draw more in case of emergency. However, Zhu Yun's entire dantian was only enough to charge 6 talismans. After charging, he needed to refine the qi to fill the dantian again. After a cycle, Zuyun continued to learn the third talisman. Golden Light Talisman. This can be said to be an offensive talisman, but the attack power is not strong. After the talisman is cast, it will instantly turn into a dazzling golden light. If used in the dark, it can be considered a miraculous effect. It took Zuyun 3 days to fully master the talisman. And outside, it was already noon. He did not rush to draw talismans, but returned to the valley and found Sun Suanhua in the alchemy room. Little kid, help the master to watch the fire, and take a look at this book by the way. Sun Suanhua threw a book of elementary alchemy skills and left on his own. Day after day. In the blink of an eye, a year passed. Zuyun went out of the valley every morning to practice at Magian Cliff, and returned to the valley at noon to help Sun Suanhua with work. Following him, he had already mastered the basics of alchemy and weapon making. As for drawing talismans, he had memorized the 5 primary talismans. Occasionally, he would help Sun Suanhua brew wine, and only then did he know that the wine brewed by Sun Suanhua was helpful for the cultivation of cultivators in the qi refining period. He couldn't help but think of Zhang Tianyuan's death. No wonder he said at the time that he had been greedy for 50 years. Except for setting up the formation, Zuyun almost learned everything, but that was all. Master, when will you teach me how to set up the formation? One day, Zuyun felt that there was nothing left to learn, so he asked Sun Suanhua. Little kid, it's only been a year, and you want to learn the things that master has kept in the bottom of the box. Sun Suanhua was also very surprised. He didn't know that Zuyun didn't think it was fast, but took several times the time of ordinary people. All this is related to Daoliuli Mirror and the result of his own efforts. Cultivating immortals requires great perseverance. Master, on this day last year, you told your disciples to learn all your skills, but this year has passed, and you have only taught 6. Zuyun said with a smile. His realm has also reached the 3rd level of qi refining. If Sun Suanhua had not never paid attention to his realm, and the skills of the 5 elements Chaos Sutra were also mysterious enough, he would have been scared to death. After thinking for a while, Sun Suanhua also knew that if he didn't take something, the kid would probably give up, so he smiled and said, well, this elementary formation atlas is for you. When you can break the fog formation outside the valley, I will teach you all my skills. Zuyun took the atlas and stuffed it into his arms, pouting and said, Master, you said at that time that you would teach me the Firebird talisman after learning 5 elementary talismans. Sun Suanhua's face was embarrassed. Little kid, I don't have any intermediate talisman paper, so I won't be able to draw on it even if I teach you. You also said that when I can make the Bigo pill, you will teach me how to make the Qi combining pill. Sun Suanhua's face became even uglier. You also said that after I learned how to make the sex standard magic sword, you will teach me how to make the lower grade and intermediate grade magic weapons. Sun Suanhua laughed dryly and said, my good disciple, Master's family doesn't have any surplus food, you have learned so much, so I must have materials. Zuyun rolled his eyes. If he had known this, he would turn around and say, I will go to learn the formation diagram. Don't blame me for breaking the mist formation and not putting it back. Good boy, are you threatening me now? Sun Suanhua blew his beard and glared, watching Zuyun flash away. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 36. I don't know what happened to the big dog this past year. Walking on the road outside the valley, Zuyun wondered if he should go see the big dog. I don't know if he knows that Ergu is missing. Fifth junior brother. Unknowingly, Zuyun heard Qin Liken calling him, and then realized that he was absent-minded and walked to the mountain gate. Senior brother Li Chang. Zhu Yun bowed his hands and saluted. Since he was here, he asked if there was any news about Zhang Tianyuan. Have you found any information about the murderer? A flash of light flashed in Qin Liken's eyes and he said, Fifth junior brother, this is what I want to find you for. A few days ago, several senior brothers who came back from going out for training heard that they drank a pot of seventh master outside the valley. Uncle's spiritual wine. It is said that some casual cultivators invited them to drink it. Is this happening? Zhu Yun was overjoyed. Originally, he thought he could put aside the news of Zhang Tianyuan's death and practice with peace of mind. But as time passed, he discovered that Zhang Tianyuan's death seemed to have become an obsession for him, affecting his practice. Not only that, he still thinks about going back to Huangshi Mountain all the time. Not to see his father Zhu Rong, but to see Ergo's sister, Zhou Huangmei. I came to see Big Dog today just to ask if I wanted to go with him. The Lingjian sect has a rule that disciples who have joined the sect within 3 years can only have one chance to go home to visit relatives after 1 year. But only once. Do you want to take this opportunity to go down the mountain and find those casual cultivators to avenge Zhang Tianyuan? Did those senior brothers tell me where they met those casual cultivators? Zhu Yun asked quickly. It's a small town at the foot of the mountain. These casual cultivators must be cultivating with the spiritual energy of our spirit sword sect at the bottom of the mountain, and doing some business without money. Qin Liken gritted his teeth and said. During this year, Zhu Yun read a lot of books while practicing, and gained a general understanding of the world of immortality. There must be a market near Lingjian sect for them to trade. Otherwise, how can these stolen things be exchanged for cultivation resources? Senior brother Liken, do you have the characteristics of those people? Zhu Yun continued to ask. Qin Liken shook his head and said, those senior brothers who have returned from training are all so superior. How can I dare to ask? I only got this news from the few words they talked about. Zhu Yun frowned slightly, there was no feature, so how to find it? Fifth junior brother, you said that a gentleman's revenge is never too late, wait for senior brother to find out more information, and ask the disciples who are coming down the mountain to pay attention as well. I will tell you when there is definite information. Qin Liken and Zhang Tianyuan have been friends for thousands of years. He is on duty at the mountain gate and most people look down on him, so Zhang Tianyuan comes to chat with him when he has nothing to do. It had been a year since Zhang Tianyuan died, and Qin Liken felt that life had become much more difficult. Senior brother Li Chang, thank you very much. Zhu Yun thanked him, and Qin Liken waved his hand and said, Fifth junior brother, there is no need to thank me for this. I also want to avenge senior brother Zhang. Unfortunately, my talent is limited, and I have only been able to practice to the 4th level of Qi refining for so many years. Senior brother Liken, you are on duty at the mountain gate. It would be good to have a 4th level. Zhu Yun comforted. Qin Liken sighed and said, there is nothing we can do about it. I am the 4th spirit root and cannot get the sect's resources. I am afraid of death when I go out to do tasks, so I found this job. I can't do it for a year. A piece of spiritual stone and a few Heki pills every month. Zhu Yun was silent, looking at it as a lot, but in fact it was not enough at all. Senior brother Liken, we have to go find Baishi. Let's talk when we have time. Go ahead, Qin Liken waved his hand and said, come and see me when you have time. I'm bored here. We can also discuss cultivation matters. Junior brother understands. Zhu Yun walked towards the direction of the sect master's palace. Dago lived in the hut behind the sect master's hall for training. When Zhu Yun found him, Dago was controlling a flying sword and sweating profusely while practicing the art of wielding a sword through the air. Zhu Yun watched it for a while and felt that although the sword technique was mysterious, in terms of power, it was much inferior to his own sword control technique. Xiao Zhu, why are you here? The big dog retracted his sword and was about to swallow a Heki pill to replenish his spiritual power. He turned his head and saw Zuyun, and came over happily. I would like to ask if we should go home to visit relatives since our 1-year period has come. Zuyun didn't say anything about the two dogs. Firstly, he didn't seem to know anything about it when he saw the big dog, and secondly, he was afraid that it would affect his devoted cultivation. It's better not to go back yet. I will master the sword controlling technique soon. When I reach the 6th level of chi refining, I will be able to fly with the sword. The implication is that he will immerse himself in cultivation and wait until he reaches the 6th level of chi refining before flying home. Zuyun thought for a moment, then said without saying anything else, then come on, practice hard. Although the sect clearly stipulates that the worldly ties must be severed 3 years after entry. But if you reach the 6th level of chi refining and go back to take a look while doing tasks or training, no one will say anything. Xiaozu, you have to work hard. I have already reached the 5th level of chi refining. The big dog's words shocked Zuyun. 5th level of chi refining? Is this the speed of dual spiritual root cultivation? You know, Zhang Tianyuan was at the 6th level of chi refining until his death. I have a Diwu glazed mirror with 5 times the difference in time flow speed, and I have been practicing hard, and now I am only at the 3rd level of chi refining. It's really annoying to people. Shaking his head, he asked, how can you practice so fast? Be careful that your foundation is not stable. No, the big dog said with a smile, my master gave me a lot of pills. I practice every day and every night to achieve such a harvest. Zuyun suddenly realized, no wonder it was like this. This year, Sun Suan Hua's task of refining alchemy has indeed become much heavier. Not only are there more conventional elixirs such as Heki Dan and Huanglong Dan, but there are also some unknown elixirs. Originally, he was not worried that Big Dog would be selected by Wanji Unshan. At such a speed, it will definitely attract the attention of the 10,000 elders. Thinking of this, Zuyun stepped forward and whispered, Big Dog, please restrain yourself properly, otherwise others will think that you are practicing so fast and what treasures will you have with you. The big dog said proudly, I'm not afraid. Master and Elder Wan are supporting me. Who in the sect dares to provoke me now? As he spoke, there was a gloomy look in his eyes, and he whispered, those naughty elders Jin and Mu, one beat them until they vomited blood, and the other kicked them out of the school. When I went to Wanjian Mountain, having learned the supreme swordsmanship, I must come back and teach them a lesson to vent their anger on Ergu. Hearing this, Zuyun couldn't help being stunned. It turns out that Big Dog has this idea. But Ergu has disappeared. Just when he didn't know how to answer the question, the big dog patted Zuyun's shoulder again and said, Xiaozu, I can rest assured that Ergu is with you. The reason why I didn't go to the valley to find you is because I want to focus on cultivation and don't want a waste of this superb dual spiritual root talent. The easier the big dog spoke, the heavier Zuyun's heart became. It seems that things have become a little more troublesome again. The big dog thought that the two dogs were taken away by him that day and settled in the valley. Do you want to tell him that Ergu is missing now? But will this affect his state of mind in cultivation? Zuyun quickly rejected this idea. My own cultivation has been affected, and I'm afraid the big dog will be too. Come on, I will take good care of Ergu. Zuyun raised his head and said. Well, if you are visiting relatives, go back and see if my old man is dead. If he is, just go to his grave and pour me a glass of wine. The big dog stretched out his hand to grab it, and the flying sword flew up out of thin air and flew into his hand. He is going to start practicing again. Zuyun nodded, indicating that he understood, and left in a hurry. Sooner or later, Big Dog will know about this, but now we don't know whether Wanji Unshan is good or bad. No, I have to hurry up. Zuyun remembered that Sun Suanhua promised him that he would tell him the answer after he learned the 7 skills to get started. But now, he only needs to form a formation. But the big dog is only one level away from reaching the 6th level of Qi refining. At the age of 11, he was still extremely beautiful in Yunzhou. How could Wang Jianshan not take him away? Zuyun only felt upset and had no intention of looking at the array diagram. The tragic situation of Ergu always appeared in his mind. No, go back and ask the old guy. If he doesn't tell me whether Wanjian Mountain is good or bad, I won't do it. Thinking of this, Zuyun immediately came out of the day-glazed mirror. Just after leaving the cave, I heard a strange cry for help coming from the mist under the cliff. He was shocked. No one came here, why would someone fall off the cliff? He frowned and squatted down, as if this way he could get closer to the sound. Suddenly, a gust of mountain wind blew, and there was a sentence mixed with it. Zuyun's expression suddenly changed. Help me. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 37. Is there anyone at the bottom of the mountain? Zuyun couldn't help but feel shocked when he heard the cry for help. He only knew that Sun Suanhua told him to come here to practice his body skills. Although I have been practicing in the past year, most of the time I still hide here and enter the Dewu glazed mirror. I don't even know anything about other things about Sword Confusion Cliff. Moreover, I come here almost every day, but I have never been down there. I don't even know what's going on down there. It was bottomless, and no one came on the way down the mountain, so he enjoyed the peace and quiet. But at this time, someone was actually calling for help? Zuyun immediately thought of Ergu. But Ergu's voice is not like this. Thinking of this, Zuyun thought about going down and taking a look. No one is here anyway, so no one else knows what you do. Whatever he wanted to do, Zuyun immediately walked down the mountain road. But the further down you go, the more blocked your view becomes. The visibility in the fog was very low, and Zuyun felt that the fog seemed to be affecting the movement of spiritual power in his body. There must be something in this mountain. And it's not suitable for cultivation. Could Ergu be down there? With such doubts, Zuyun carefully held a fireball talisman in his hand. At the same time, he also took out the long sword given by Elder Wan and held it in his hand. Over the years, he hasn't practiced much in the sword control technique, but when his sword energy is released, he still has to use a few moves every day. However, it is still unable to cause effective damage within the Dewu glazed mirror. But Zuyun knew that he had improved a lot in strength. After walking for about half an hour, Zuyun found that the mountain road was getting steeper and steeper. However, his body skills had improved a lot, and it was still as if he were walking on flat ground. This was not a problem for Zuyun. But not long after walking, he stepped on flat ground. However, the surroundings are already invisible. Strange, why is there no sunlight shining down on this valley bottom? Zuyun was surprised. He could still feel the sun above his head, but he couldn't see anything around him. He tried to release his spiritual consciousness to explore the path. However, the range of spiritual consciousness is limited and can only go 3 steps away from the body. Zuyun didn't know that ordinary monks in the Qi refining stage couldn't use their spiritual consciousness, but he was practicing the 5 elements of Kaya Sutra, which was completely different from ordinary Qi refining techniques. Zuyun didn't move for a long time. He was afraid that he would get lost at the bottom of the valley. After thinking for a moment, he took out a low-grade magic sword and stuck it on the ground as a mark. After walking a few more steps, he inserted another sword. In 1 year, he learned how to refine weapons and put more than 100 low-grade and low-level magic swords in his storage bag. As I got deeper into the fog, the voice that said "save me" became clearer and clearer. And the fog in front of me seemed to be slowly fading away. Finally, Zuyun took a step forward, and the space in front of him suddenly became clear. All the fog seemed to disappear without a trace in an instant. But the darkness is still there. Zuyun was shocked and did not dare to step forward rashly, so he took another step back. He was once again in a fog. Taking another step, the fog disappeared again. Hey, it's so magical. It seems like these fogs can't go any further. Is it the same as the fog array? Zuyun has to go in and out of the valley at least once a day. He often walks in the mist formation and is very familiar with it. When I saw it at this time, I felt that it seemed to be somewhat similar to the fog formation. Save me, I. At this time, the sound suddenly became clear and audible. It was no longer the same as before. Maybe it was because there was no fog. Zuyun could hear that it was coming from the front. However, it was too dark and he could not see clearly. Go over and take a look. Zuyun concentrated on it, clenched the magic sword and fireball talisman in his hand, and was also ready to release a golden light talisman at any time. It's dark here, so even if there are some monsters, they must be afraid of light. He walked slowly, not daring to release his breath, and the spiritual power in his body was operating to the extreme. Until, a huge pillar suddenly appeared in front of me. The pillars seemed to rise into the sky, reaching as far as the eye could see. But Zuyun had never seen this pillar before in the cave in Magian Cliff. And on the pillar body, there were some complicated lines carved on it that he couldn't understand at all. Looking down the pillar, his pupils suddenly shrank. A young girl was actually trapped in it, as if she was connected to the pillar. Help me! Just when Zuyun was astonished, the girl suddenly made a sound, which shocked Zuyun. Who are you? Zuyun took 2 steps back, looking wary. Just by retreating, the girl's face seemed to become blurry. I am the one imprisoned here, little brother, please save me. 2 crystal tears fell from the corner of the girl's eyes, sliding down the corner of her mouth, and disappeared into the darkness in an instant. You're weird, I don't dare to save you. Zuyun shook his head. Unless you tell me the reason for your imprisonment and your identity, I can't consider it. Brother, please save me. After you save me, I will be very grateful. Thank you very much. Zuyun was non-committal. He already felt that this place was weird. A girl who looked about the same age as himself was trapped in the stone pillars. Don't say anything else. What to do if you eat, drink or have diarrhea? Yes, I'm very grateful. I was originally from the Yologo sect and was imprisoned here by the people from Wanjian Mountain. If you rescue me, I, the Yologo sect, will be very grateful. Upon hearing this, Zuyun's expression changed drastically, and he exclaimed, Yologo sect ceased to exist 500 years ago, how can you still be from Yologo sect? What? The girl's expression was even more shocked than Zuyun's. She was stunned for a moment. She shook her head crazily and said, it's impossible. How could our Yologo sect be wiped out? Is it Wan Jianshan's doing? Is it true? Tell me. Looking at the hysterical girl, Zuyun retreated calmly. He was very calm. This girl is definitely not what she seems. The Yologo sect has been in the capital for 500 years, which means she is at least 500 years old. And only in the elixir forming stage, you can live 500 years. From his words, it can be heard that Wan Jianshan was involved in this matter. For such a giant, does he think he has lived too long? Don't leave. Is it you who destroyed my Yologo sect and then came to watch my jokes? Seeing Zuyun retreating, the girl's eyes suddenly glowed red and she glared at Zuyun fiercely. At the same time, the fog outside the space suddenly rotated and rumbled. Senior, it's not me. I'm just a child. How could I possibly destroy the legendary Yologo sect? Zuyun didn't know much about Yologo sect. I have only read in books that Yalogo sect belongs to the demonic path and has the greatest hatred against Wanjian Mountain. It's you, it's you. A cold and strange demonic energy rose into the sky, and the stone pillar seemed to be affected and began to shake. At the same time, in a small building near the sect master's hall, Wan Laojin suddenly opened his eyes. No, why did the witch suddenly wake up? I have to go and have a look. I saw a flash of sword light behind him, and the long sword behind him was already floating in the air. He stepped in with his sword and soared into the sky. Looking down, I saw that the houses of Lingjian sect were shaking, and countless disciples had horrified expressions on their faces. Some people shouted and the ground collapsed, but more people relied on themselves as monks and remained unmoved. He just stayed in the open space and discussed something with his classmates. Wan Laojin had a glimmer of light in his eyes, and he snorted coldly in his heart, if that demon girl is going to be born, I can only use your essence and blood to suppress it. While thinking, several more lightsabers rushed out from all directions, and they all gathered after seeing Wan Laojin. Elder Wan, what's going on? The speaker was Lin Zhenyang. The rest of them are all in the foundation building stage of Lingjian sect. A total of 10 people. Nothing's wrong. Calm down your disciples. I'll go over and take a look now. Maybe there was an accident at Misty Sword Cliff. I just need to stabilize it. Wan Laojin looked indifferent. Mi Jianya said that Wan Jianshan used the formation method to improve the strength and realm of sword cultivators, but they had no idea that this was just Wan Jianshan deceiving them. Then there's Elder Lao Wan. Lin Zhenyang winked at the elders, and then they all appeared in the sect master's hall. Sect master, I think there is something wrong with those 10,000 elders. Misty Sword Cliff has been here for hundreds of years, and nothing like this has ever happened. Elder Mu said in a deep voice. Another elder also stood up and said, yes, sect leader, although Elder Wan was sent by Wanjian Mountain to station here, Misjian Cliff is also under the jurisdiction of my sect, and we have the right to go and have a look. That's right, sect master. As the sword training holy place within our spirit sword sect, he never lets us go down the mountain. That's all. Why don't we set up some disciples to patrol the mountain road? When something goes wrong, there must be a monster. I think we should go and have a look. More than 10 foundation building elders all noticed something was wrong and asked to find out. Lin Zhenyang pondered, then looked coldly and said, you can go, but, wait until this incident is over. Sect master, this. I've made up my mind, don't say any more. Yes, sect master. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 38. At this time, Elder Wan noticed that no one was following him and sped up. Yu drove his flying sword and plunged down from the cliff of Misty Sword Cliff. Damn it, that witch suddenly woke up. Could it be that kid from a year ago? Impossible. Although this witch can condense black shadows to devour living beings and provide him with magical power, a small chi refining practitioner can't help but a drop in the bucket. Besides, I will clean up those shadows every other year, so there will be no accidents. While he was pondering, he had already discovered that the big pillar that reached the sky was constantly shaking, and it was likely to break at any time. No, this witch woke up and went crazy and burned her life. He was so frightened that he rushed straight to the bottom of the valley without thinking about anything else. Zuyun, on the other hand, was looking for an opportunity to escape, but he never thought that a ball of sword light broke through the fog and came straight towards him. Seeing the terrifying power exuding from the aura, Zuyun had no doubt that he would be reduced to dregs by a sword. Even if it wasn't an attack on him, if it was affected by the aftershocks, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to bear it well. Zuyun got wise in his haste and shouted to the girl. The people from Wanjian Mountain are here. For an instant, the red light in the girl's eyes shrank, and then she raised her head. but due to the stone pillar, she couldn't look up to the sky and see Wan Laojian. Only. But she immediately locked onto Wan Laojian's location and aura. Ha ha ha, you are indeed from Wan Jianshan, you deserve to die. After the words fell, Zuyun felt that the pressure around him was greatly reduced. At the same time, the power condensed and twisted into a ball, rushing towards Wan Laojian. No, that which found me. In mid-air, Wan Laojian, who was falling rapidly, turned pale with shock. In his danshan, a Taoist platform was spinning crazily, and spiritual power was flowing towards the magic sword at his feet. The spiritual power in the foundation building stage was drained out at this moment. Bold witch, you are seeking death. He shouted violently and quickly dodged the girl's attack. At the same time, he slapped the storage bag and several black pebbles flew out of the air. Wan Laojian grasped these boulders and frantically absorbed the spiritual power within them. In the blink of an eye, all these stones turned into dust and scattered between the sky and the earth. Spiritual stone, Zuyun exclaimed in his heart and immediately knew what kind of stone it was. Everyone in Wanjian Mountain deserves death. Seeing that her attack missed, the girl roared again, but the red light in her eyes dimmed. Obviously there is no successor. Humph, there are people suppressing it by the confused sword mountain formation, so what if you are in the Dan formation stage? Moreover, you are still burning your longevity. I am afraid that at this time is running out. The voice came from afar, and by the time he finished speaking, Wan Laojian had already landed in front of the pillar. Only then did he realize that there was actually an aura from the chi refining stage hiding behind him. Who? After Wan Laojian discovered that the demon girl was about to break through the mysterious sword mountain formation, he had already activated his spiritual consciousness and surrounded him. Although Zuyun was hiding in the fog, he was discovered immediately. A remnant of Yaloo sect? No wonder this demon girl suddenly wakes up and suffers death for me. Without waiting for Zuyun to reply, Wan Laojian put his two fingers together, and the long sword floating at his side turned into a stream of light and stabbed towards Zuyun quickly. Not good. Zuyun secretly thought that something was wrong. Before the sword arrived, huge coercion fell from the sky. Shenfa can't be used at all. This is a gap in realm. His mind was spinning rapidly, whether he used the fireball talisman or the sword energy, even if it was used, it was comparable to a blow in the foundation building stage. But he couldn't bear the aftermath of this head-on confrontation. Instead of doing this, it's better to draw fire from the bottom of the cauldron. Zuyun was determined, and without saying a word, he replaced an earth shield talisman and threw it in front of him. Boom! As soon as the talisman left his hand, there was a loud sound. An earthy yellow barrier suddenly appeared in front of Zuyun. Boom! Wan Laojian's sword pierced the earth shield and made a loud noise. But there was still a huge force that penetrated the earth shield and instantly knocked Zuyun away. Is this the strength of the foundation building stage? Zuyun's mouth was filled with tears, and his heart was shaken. It's so powerful, no wonder the master said that everyone below the foundation is just an ant. As for Wan Laojian, as soon as he hit him, he saw a shadow flying backwards in the mist, so he recalled the magic sword. From what he saw, how could he block his full blow during the chi refining stage? Which, I originally thought I could suppress you until your lifespan is exhausted and you die, but I didn't expect you to burn your lifespan yourself. Wan Laojian said with a grin, this way I can return to Wanjian Mountain as soon as possible, and I don't need to stay in this place where birds don't shit. Everyone in Wanjian Mountain, should all die. There was blood on the corner of the girl's mouth, her eyes were no longer red, and she stared at Wan Laojian with hatred. Ha, Wan Laojian smiled disdainfully and said, but now Wanjian Mountain will remain famous for 100 generations, and Yaloo sect will be infamous for 10,000 years. Moreover, what about your pill-forming period? As he spoke, he frivolously summoned the sword and lifted the girl's chin with the tip of the sword. Bah, you bitch. If I can come out, I can wipe you out with just one little finger. Then you come out? Come and beat me. Wan Laojin looked the girl up and down, and suddenly smiled lewdly. Anyway, you are a useless person now, and your lifespan is not long. Instead of dying on the spot, it is better to let Wan have a good time. I heard that Yolo sex women are never close to men. How dare you? The girl's face suddenly turned pale. Why don't I dare? Wan Laojin waved his hand and made a chirping sound with his long sword, making a tear in the girl's clothes, revealing a section of her arm. There's a little bit of red on it. Tisk, 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 the rumors are indeed true. You have been suppressed for 600 years. At first, I was afraid that the previous defenders had enjoyed it, who knew that in the end, they actually took advantage of me. Seeing the look of horror on the girl's face, the desire to conquer in his heart became stronger. He took a step forward and was about to tear the girl's clothes apart. Suddenly there was a low shout from behind. Beast, let him go. What followed was a huge fireball. Eh? Is it this fireball talisman again? Boy, is it you? Ergu immediately appeared in his mind. He turned around and cut the fireball in half with a sword, and said in surprise, "You're not dead." Upon hearing this, Zuyun couldn't help but be stunned. Am I not dead? Except for the gift of a sword to him when we first met, we no longer have anything to do with each other. Why would he say that? Zuyun was no longer the ignorant young man he was back then. With a thought in his mind, he imitated Ergu's accent and said, I'm not dead. How can I seek revenge from you if I die? Ha ha ha, revenge. It's just a chi refining period, but it's worthy of seeking revenge from me in the foundation building period. It's so whimsical. Wan Laojin retracted his hand, stretched out his right hand, and the sword suddenly fell into his palm. In his opinion, if you blink your eyes during the chi refining stage, you will die instantly. You want to suppress the pill formation stage even during the foundation establishment stage, why can't I do it during the chi refining stage? Zuyun threw another fireball talisman. He didn't dare to rush forward, it would be to die. Only in this fog can he have a glimmer of hope. He was not trying to save this Yolo sect girl, but he knew that when Wan Laojin came back to his senses, he would definitely kill him. There is no escape for him. Rather than being attacked from behind, it's better to give it a try. I have to say, this talisman is pretty good. When I snatched it from you, I threw it to Lin Zhenyang, and then I didn't let go of it for a while. Now is the time to get some more from your hand. Wan Laojin smiled disdainfully and rushed into the fog with his sword. Zuyun was surprised and happy when he saw this. What was surprising was that Wan Laojin was so decisive, and happy that only in the mist could he have a glimmer of hope. Eat my talisman. Zuyun took a step back and threw another fireball talisman. Ha ha ha. Wan Laojin slashed away the fireball with another sword. Eat my talisman. Zuyunki fought and retreated, throwing the fireball charm while retreating. After throwing 7 or 8 pieces, Zuyun's heel suddenly touched a magic sword that he had inserted here to mark the spot. A flash of inspiration flashed in his mind, and he turned his hand and took out a golden talisman from his arms. Take another talisman from me. Wan Laojin had long been paralyzed by Zuyun. He thought it was still a fireball talisman, but he was so close now. Although he couldn't see Zuyun's face clearly, he recognized him as Ergu because of his preconception. I won't let you set fire to this talisman again. He threw the sword away with his hand and stabbed the golden light talisman straight away. Upon seeing this, Zuyun quickly turned his back and threw himself to the ground. Boom! The golden light talisman cracked, and a golden light suddenly broke through the dark clouds like the sun, shining brightly. The speed of light was so fast that it immediately shone into Wan Laojin's eyes. Damn it, you cunning little devil, you dare to cheat. Wan Laojun was blinded instantly and immediately solidified his spiritual consciousness, fearing that Zhu Yun would take the opportunity to blast him with a fireball talisman. At the same time, he also recalled his magic sword and surrounded himself with a nervous expression. However, Zhu Yun put on a posture, the first move of the sword control technique, releasing the sword energy. In the Danshan, the golden spiritual power was drained out, and all of it poured into the sword body. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 39. Boy, your sword. Wan Laojun was greatly surprised. Before Zhu Yun's sword energy was released, he had already remembered what happened a year ago. 2 of the 3 young cultivators of the spirit sword sect died under this sword. Unexpectedly, he met him again at this time. Until now, he didn't know that the one hiding in the mist was still Zhu Yun. Before he finished speaking, Zhu Yun's sword energy had already shot out. Wan Laojun didn't dare to take it head on, and his body jumped back more than 10 steps in succession. Zhu Yun's sword passed through the mist and hit the stone pillar. Boom! There was a loud noise, and the stone pillar kept shaking. The array pattern engraved on it flashed a flash of light and quickly disappeared. Zhu Yun didn't notice these, but looked at the vague figure outside the mist, and began to madly circulate the spiritual power in his body. The Danshan of the 5-color turntable was already missing 1 color. The other 4 colors were constantly converting to gold spiritual power. But his aura became a little weak. Zhu Yun took out a chi combining pill without any hesitation and swallowed it. This one was saved during the competition last year. There were 4 pills at that time, and he gave 2 to Ergo, leaving only 2 for himself. A young chi refining stage can actually release such a big sword. If this kid is not a genius, then he must have a sword technique for practicing the world. No matter what, if he is not used by Wan Jianshan, he will die. Wan Laojun is a strong man in the foundation building stage after all, and he has made a decision as soon as he thinks about it. In the past year, he has hardly communicated with Lin Zhenyang and others, and has been secretly looking for the person who used that sword at that time. But he didn't expect to meet him at this time. Boy, surrender and I will spare your life. Wan Laojun slowly walked forward a few steps. But Zhu Yun took 3 steps back along the mist. Boy, want to run. Wan Laojun saw that the figure became a little blurry, and saw that Zhu Yun's aura was withering. How could he give him a chance? Immediately, he rushed into the fog. The spiritual consciousness was squeezed and could not be released too far. But he didn't care, because in his opinion, the spiritual power of the sword just now was magnificent, and this kid must have used up his spiritual power. Even if he swallowed the chi combining pill, it would be impossible to fully recover at this time. Just surrender. Wan Laojun rushed over with the sword. The spiritual consciousness was affected, and the sword control was also restricted. Good opportunity. Zhu Yun saw the figure rushing over, drew out the sword that was left at his feet as a mark, and once again drew out the gold spiritual power that had just been transformed in his body. The sword energy was released again. How dare you fight me head-on with your last strength? In the haze, Wan Laojun saw Zhu Yun posing again, and he felt disdainful and did not retreat at all. However, although Zhu Yun's sword had less gold spiritual power than the first one, it was beyond Wan Laojun's expectation. The sword energy damaged the inferior magic sword in his hand, but the attack was not affected at all, and it shot straight towards Wan Laojun. Wan Laojun did not use his spiritual sense, and when he realized that the sword energy was wrong, it was too late to dodge. What? Wan Laojun was shocked. This was the time when the old power was not exhausted and the new power was not born. Even though he was stepping on the unique sword steps of Wan Jianshan, it was too late. Boom! Wan Laozhen was still an 8th level foundation building expert after all, and he made a quick decision and immediately met the long sword in his hand. Zhu Yun's sword energy was shattered, and Wan Laozhen took the blow hard, but it was not good. The tiger's mouth was already cracked, and blood was dripping, which was extremely dazzling on the ground. Damn it, damn it! I was actually injured by an ant in the qi refining stage. Wan Laozhen looked like a madman, and he saw Zhu Yun retreat a few steps while roaring. He took a deep breath and rushed forward again. If he felt so bad, he must feel worse. Take advantage of his illness to kill him. However, Zhu Yun used sword energy as his enemy, and after the sword energy was released, the inferior magic sword had already collapsed and was thrown away by him. He didn't suffer any recoil at all. On the contrary, when he saw Wan Laozhen catching up, he pulled out another magic sword. At this time, he was particularly fortunate that he had left more than a dozen magic swords along the way as a mark. Some of these magic swords were trophies from the competition that year, and some were made by hand for practice in the past year. Sword energy is released. Zhu Yun's spiritual power conversion was a bit behind at this time. But facing Wan Laozhen's aggressiveness, he could only bear it. Rather than standing and getting beaten, it is better to fight and retreat, and fight back desperately. This sword is more than 30% weaker than the previous one. But it still made Wan Laozhen suffer a big loss. Wow! Wan Laozhen took another sword hard, and his tiger's mouth was completely broken. He couldn't figure out how Zhu Yun could still have spiritual power. He was obviously only at the qi refining stage. Zhu Yun had no idea of Wan Laozhen's surprise, but he didn't know that this was the special feature of the 5 Elements Chaos Sutra for 5 spiritual roots. For ordinary cultivators to practice, they need several times the spiritual power for several spiritual roots. The fewer spiritual roots, the faster they practice, but there is no difference in their danshan. The qi refining method of the 5 Elements Chaos Sutra distinguishes the spiritual power attributes, which is equivalent to dividing the danshan into 5 parts. And each part is equivalent to the danshan of a normal cultivator. This means that Zhu Yun's spiritual power is 5 times that of a cultivator at the same level. At this time, his realm is low, and the transformation of spiritual power will not be so fast. When the realm is high, any spiritual power you want to use can be converted instantly. Boy, I don't believe that your spiritual power is more than my 8th level of foundation building period. Wan Laozhen suffered a loss again, and he rushed forward with a hot head. Zhu Yun gritted his teeth and held on. Every time he released a sword, he took 3 steps back. Until he suddenly felt empty in front of him, as if he had retreated out of the mist. And there was only one long sword left behind him. It was the one used for positioning when he just came down. Is the foundation building period so tough? Zhu Yun cursed inwardly, and used the last sword at the figure in the mist. After using this sword, his spiritual power has also been completely exhausted. He still has one qi combining pill. But the power of the previous one has not been used up. If he swallows it rashly, it will not have much effect. Boom! Wan Laozhen once again dispersed Zhu Yun's sword energy. His entire right arm, covered with blood, walked out of the mist. As he fought his way out, he saw more than 10 magic swords thrown on the ground, and was secretly surprised why this kid carried so many swords. Seeing that Zhu Yun had no sword in his hand, he was relieved for no reason. Although he took every sword, in fact, he was not relaxed. Boy, why is it you? Seeing Zhu Yun's face, Wan Laozhen was even more shocked. From the beginning to the end, he thought that the one fighting him was Ergu. Yes, it's me. Zhu Yun remained calm and reached out to grab a golden light talisman. If he ran up the mountain at this time, without the interference of the mist, he would definitely be locked by the spiritual consciousness. He could only take him by surprise and do the opposite. At the moment, the only way he could kill Wan Laojun was the fireball talisman. I didn't expect it, I didn't expect it. Not only was I injured by a chi refining stage, but I was also injured by a waste with 5 spiritual roots. What a shame. Wan Laojun roared in a low voice and raised his long sword. Zhu Yun's pupils suddenly shrank, and the golden light talisman was thrown at the long sword. After leaving the fog, his spiritual consciousness returned, and he immediately knew that this was a sign that Wan Laojun was going to fly the sword. Sure enough. As soon as the sword in Wan Laojun's hand flew out, it pierced the golden light talisman. The golden light was so strong that Zhu Yun had already moved his body and rushed into the fog again. He threw a few fireball talismans behind him. Wow! Wan Laojun missed his attack and was blinded again. He was hit by several fireball talismans in succession. He was furious and roared while controlling the magic sword to stab randomly at the mountain road. After 3 breaths, the golden light dissipated. When his vision recovered, Zhu Yun was gone. Damn it! You actually ran back into the mist. I will tear you into pieces and extract your soul and refine your spirit. Wan Laojun has never been so helpless with a chi refining stage. He recalled his long sword and rushed into the mist. However, what was waiting for him were several fireball talismans. Break it for me. Wan Laojun used several sword techniques in succession to split the fireballs in half. In anger, his spiritual power was also fading madly. And Zhu Yun, although he had no spiritual power, but with the body skills of Chang Shengju, he moved around in the mist and threw out the fireball talismans desperately. Let me see how many of these strange talismans you can have. Wan Laojun gradually lost his mind and didn't notice that his spiritual power was gradually running out. Until one of the fireball talismans came towards him, and he didn't split it with a sword, and it exploded on him. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 40. Zhu Yun noticed something was wrong behind him. After throwing so many fireball talismans, he was almost used to the sound and movement of fireballs being chopped open. But just now, why hasn't Wan Laojun been split? Zhu Yun glanced back, still unable to see clearly in the fog. However, there was a burning smell. Could it be that a fireball talisman just hit him? Zhu Yun's eyes lit up. Does this mean that Wan Laojun's spiritual power has been almost used? Thinking of this, Zhu Yun was not in a hurry to escape, and directly took out a stack of fireball talismans from his storage bag. There are dozens of them. Until the figure emerged, Wan Laojun came into his sight. Boy, aren't you going to run away? Seeing Zhu Yun stop in place, Wan Laojun was slightly startled, but then he laughed ferociously. Did you know that you couldn't run away, so you stayed here to die? Zhu Yun saw that his clothes were in tatters, and most of his beard and hair were burned off. He couldn't help but smile. It's not that I can't run away, it's that you can't run away. As he spoke, he suddenly threw a bunch of fireball talismans in his hand at Wan Laojun. This distance was only a few steps away. Zhu Yun knew that Wan Laojun couldn't run away, and he couldn't run away either. As soon as he threw the fireball talisman, he threw a bunch of earth shield talismans in front of him with his other hand. Boy, you! Wan Laojun's face was full of horror. He never thought that Zhu Yun had so many fireball talismans. He frantically tried to use his spiritual power to block it in front of him, but only to find that his dantian had long been exhausted, and the Taoist platform could not condense at all. He wanted to run, but all his body skills and sword steps required spiritual power. By the time he realized that he was the lamb to be slaughtered, all the fireball talismans had already hit his face. Boom! 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 Huge fireballs exploded in front of him one after another. The fire shot into the sky and the fog was stirred. Wan Laojun's whole body has also been engulfed by the fireball, and there is no trace of human form. In front of Zuyun, countless generous earth shields blocked the concussion of the fireball, but even so, he felt extremely uncomfortable. Seeing that these earth shields seemed to be able to hold on for a while longer, Zuyun ran towards the back without even thinking. But he was chased all the way by Wan Laojin and had already lost his direction. Fortunately, this fog is only used to isolate spiritual consciousness and sight, and there is no other danger. Zuyun ran in a straight line and soon ran into the center of the fog and saw the sky-reaching stone pillar again. At this time, cracks appeared on the stone pillars. Coupled with the constant vibration caused by the fireball talisman at this time, the stone pillar was almost crumbling. As for the girl in the middle of the stone pillars, the blank look in her eyes suddenly flashed with surprise when she saw Zuyun. "Brother, help me." Zuyun stopped and was a little cautious. When he was hiding in the mist at first, he heard the conversation between Wan Laojin and the girl, and knew that she was a monk in the alchemy stage. He didn't dare to save her at that time, so how could Zuyun dare now? He shook his head and said, "I can't save you." "You can. You can," the girl said anxiously. "This is an ordinary confused sword formation, used for suppression. The eye of the formation is on the stone pillar, and the stone pillar is constantly attacked by your fireballs, and there is no way to maintain it in the formation pattern. Power. I don't dare to save you." Zuyun continued to shake his head. The girl was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, "Are you afraid that I will kill you?" Zuyun was non-committal. The girl smiled miserably and said, "Yes, I am the young palace master of Yoluo sect, and I am also the witch that you sword cultivators talk about. Forget it, you can leave, Yoluo sect has been destroyed anyway. Even if you save me, where do I go from here?" Upon hearing this, Zuyun sighed and prepared to leave. If there is such a big commotion in Magian Cliff, people from Lingjian sect will come to check it out later. You have to find a place, enter the Dewu glazed mirror to avoid the limelight, and come out again when you have the right opportunity. Wan Laojin will definitely die. He didn't need to see it. In the foundation building period where spiritual power is exhausted, how can one withstand a joint attack equivalent to dozens of foundation building periods? Wait. Just when Zuyun entered the fog, the girl suddenly called out to Zuyun again. "How?" Zuyun subconsciously stopped. "If you don't save me, then kill me." Hearing the girl's words, Zuyun had an incredible look on his face. From his understanding, monks are most afraid of death. Otherwise, why should we pursue Taoism and pursue immortality? You dare not save me because you are afraid that I will kill you. Then can I ask you to kill me and then take my body to Yoluo mountain in Yeazhu? Zuyun said nothing. The girl had no grudge against him, but he had done many things to her. "If you don't kill me, I will die. Rather than die without a burial, it is better for the fallen leaves to return to their roots." As she spoke, tears shed from the corners of the girl's eyes, which made Zuyun's heart tremble. "My name is Mengwei. I grew up in Yoluo section, so even if I die, I want to be buried in Yoluo mountain. I know that you must have killed Wan Laojin. He is the guardian of this formation. Once he dies, Wan Jian, the people from the mountain, will also send people over. Wan Jianshan and I, Yoluo sect, are feuding, and they want to trap me here. But just now, out of anger, I used the heavenly demon burning life technique, but my lifespan is already running out. Maybe they are not here yet, and I will already be here dead. I would have died before I came. If this formation is destroyed, I will be buried in the wilderness. If I come, I will die, and the people of Wanjian Mountain may vent their anger on my body, so, please." Zuyun understood what Mengwei said. He had been in the Lingjian sect for a year and wanted to go home to visit his relatives. Not to mention, Mengwei has been trapped here for at least 500 years. "But, you and I have no grudges. I don't want to kill you, It would only increase the evil. I'm afraid of being tainted by the cause and effect. Zuyun was also a little confused. Meng Wei lowered his head and seemed to mutter to himself, back then, when someone learned that we were members of the Yaloo sect, they wished they could kill us on the spot, but why are the people I meet now unwilling to kill me? What about this witch? The person I met last year was like this, and the person I met this year is like this. The sound reached Zuyun's ears, and he was suddenly shocked. What did you say? You met someone here last year. When Meng Wei heard Zuyun's question, he raised his head and said, yes, last year there was a young monk who seemed to be at a similar level to you. He jumped down from above and broke his leg. Where are the others? Zuyun interrupted Meng Wei's words and asked quickly. Do you know each other? Meng Wei looked at Zuyun, and seemed to suddenly realize, yes, you are both in this small sect, so you must know each other. Zuyun's tone couldn't help but strengthen a bit. I'm asking you about others. Gone, left half a year ago. I jumped down a year ago. Why did I leave half a year ago? Meng Wei tilted his head and said with an inexplicable expression, he broke his leg, and he is not in the qi refining stage. If he wants to leave, his leg must be healed first. Before Zuyun could ask questions, Meng Wei added, he has been talking to me here for half a year. He is just like you. I asked him to save me, but he didn't dare. I asked him to kill me, but he didn't dare either. Later I just casually asked him to go to Yeazhu Yaloo mountain to call for people to rescue me, and he agreed. However, I didn't know at that time that I had been trapped here for more than 500 years. Saying that, Meng Wei lowered his head again. Is Yeazhu also in the Ya realm? Zuyun stood up suddenly. He had already guessed that that person was most likely Ergu. Well, the center of Ya realm is Yeazhu. What, you want to find that person? Meng Wei's eyes suddenly lit up and he said, I gave him my natal magic weapon as a token. If you save me, I can sense my natal magic weapon and I can naturally take you to find him. He is only in the qi refining stage, how can he get to Yeazhu? I taught him some Yaloo sect techniques, and he learned them very quickly. When I left, he was already at the 5th level of qi refining. As long as he doesn't cause trouble, he can protect himself. 5th level of qi refining. Zuyun was secretly shocked. Are Yaloo sect's skills so powerful? He thought for a moment and did not agree directly. Instead, he asked in a deep voice, do you know his name? After asking this question, Zuyun also became nervous. He was afraid that the promise he would get would be Ergu, but he was also afraid that the promise he would get would not be Ergu. I don't know, Meng Wei shook his head, he didn't say his name, but what? He has a pigtail.